Thanks for joining us for our New Testament challenge. Today we're in the last chapter of 1 Corinthians chapter 16. And at the first of this chapter, Paul mentions something kind of in passing. He talks about the church of Corinth taking up an offering on the first day of the week to send to the church in Jerusalem. We also hear Paul talk about this in Galatians. And why was this offering being sent? Well, if you understand from history, the church in Jerusalem was facing a tough time. Not only had persecution coming from the Jewish people, but also there was a famine, and just Christians in Jerusalem were struggling. Now, interesting that Paul sees a great opportunity here. See, again, if we read through Acts, remember that the Jewish Christians, those who were Christians but first Jews, kind of looked down on the Gentile Christians. A matter of fact, there was that challenge in Acts that Paul and Barnabas had to address. Could you actually even be a Christian without being a Jew? And to us, that's a crazy question. But when you think that Christ was a Jew and Christ practiced dietary law, he observed the feast, all the apostles did that. So why wouldn't new Christians just kind of adopt that part as Judeo-Christianity? But Paul saw that you're saved by none of the rites, none of the law, but it was by grace. And so he and Barnabas stood up and the council in Jerusalem said, no, you can be a Christian without being a Jew. And even though that was accepted by the church, it still was a struggle. Remember, it was the Judaizers that went to Galatia after Paul had went and was trying to convince them and winning the argument that they should go back to obeying the law as part of Christianity. And Paul in Galatians stands against that, which we'll read that book in just a short time. But here was the opportunity. You had many of the Christians who had accepted the ruling, but honestly, they looked down on Gentile Christians as if they were not as holy or they weren't as committed to God as they were. And this was an opportunity as they were struggling, all of a sudden, for these people who they looked down on to send them a gift and maybe break down some of those barriers of prejudice that existed. Remember, Christ gave an example of this in the parable of the Good Samaritan. Remember in that he talks about a person, a Jew who's left for dead. And it's not the other Jews that help him, but this Samaritan, this person they look down on, is a person who takes care of him, who works with him, who comforts him, who supplies so that he lives. And that was a way of really striking at the Jews' prejudice against the Samaritans. And to me, this was an opportunity for prejudice to be struck down, as here would be the church in Jerusalem struggling, and all of a sudden they get a gift from these Gentile churches that literally give them the money they need to put food on their table. You know, a lot of times when we see people who maybe they've stood against us, maybe they've had a harsh or wrong position and something bad happens to them, honestly, sometimes we want to go, yay, God, they're getting theirs. And honestly, that's an opportunity for us to step in and not to judge them, not to say you're getting what you deserve, but to give them what they don't deserve. Isn't that what grace is? God doesn't give us what we deserve. God doesn't give us what we earn. He gives us grace. And we're to turn around and give that grace to others. So when you have someone who's hurting, when you have someone, maybe they treated you wrong and there's an opportunity for you to step in and truly minister to them, that is what God's given you the chance to step in and give, to break down those walls of barriers. And it worked. After the first century, we don't see that breakup anymore. There weren't Christians who were Jews and Christians who weren't Jews. They were just Christians. And so maybe there's somebody who has honestly been an opponent. They've been in opposition, and maybe they have a need that God has given you the ability to meet. And you can step in and do that and break down that wall, that barrier that separates you, and be brought back together. Guys, great job finishing the book of Corinthians. Tomorrow, join us as we start the second book of Corinthians. Thanks for being part of our New Testament challenge.